one does this.
in Germany.
You're probably less picture on this side.
7th
Yes, but
minute.
it only works if you haven't
All right.
sneezed on it before.
Give them more,
The other
more
thing
volume.
is the span greeting you do with the elbow like this.
We should rather give our head a shake so that the brain starts working again. It's beyond words. Face masks are sold out. There are no more gloves. Sagrotan has become a bestseller. By the way, it says on the Sagrotan bottles that it protects from corona, as if they had already known this many years ago.
Wait a minute. It says that on the label? It protects from...
Coronavirus. It's protecting from coronavirus. This is nothing new. Coronaviruses are actually only harmless, common cold germs. They may have a more started in 2019, and they have added something new, which is exactly what I want to say. The inventors of pandemics can invent a new flu wave every year. And since with the swine flu in 2016, the criteria for pandemics were changed by the WHO, you can announce a level 6 pandemic every year with every normal flu that spreads, and stage this biblical extent that we have now every year anew. With the effect, we have a new virus, a mutated virus, which only specialized labs can detect, which then develop special lab tests for it, which then have a horrible reliability. For instance, we had a test for swine flu, which only had an 11% hit rate, which means you don't even need a test at all. We are always searching for the virus. If the patient weighs 300 pounds, is a diabetic, a smoker or alcoholic, the first swine flu patient in Germany who died, she was treated with Tamiflu and other virostatic medicine, and she's had an organ failure. I think she would have died from the slightest breeze. It's tragic, I don't want to badmouth it, but this was the first fatality of swine flu in Germany. Then came the next, and the counter clock was ticking on. And it's the same now. We don't count the cases who are currently sick, but you have with every SARS or COVID case a click. 1, 2, 3,000, 3,100, 4,000 and so on. So they count every case since the beginning, and it sounds much more dramatic if you say in Germany we have 3,000 cases, instead of saying currently there are perhaps only 12 cases, and one of those patients is in hospital, he's a diabetic, he's 80 years old, he's getting tons of drugs. Maybe he has a pneumonia, and we have to treat him with antibiotics, and there are many side effects. If he then dies, he has died because of corona.
And if somebody is cured from this corona, is he then taken out of the statistics?
No, the counter ticks on.
Ah, okay.
So the public is frightened. We already have 3,000 cases or 4,000 cases. That 90% of those have been cured in the meantime is not mentioned.
But why is the public not aware of this? Why are we so fooled like this?
Simply because it's not explained, because it's always beneficial to frighten the people. You see how you can frighten people with simple media reports. You just interview a restaurant owner and he says, I don't have customers anymore and I have to throw away all my food. Then you film an empty street without people where a dust ball is rolling across the street and once upon a time music in the background, all staged and artificial. They will always frighten us. It's like the Resident Evil life. And it's sad that we as doctors cannot do anything against it. Because if we as doctors would simply look, what kind of patients are those who are really affected? Is it children? Is it teenagers, young adults or elderly who are hit badly with an influential infection, who can develop high fever and a pneumonia? This is totally normal, and it is dependent on the immune status of the patient. Actually, it would be up to us doctors to speak clearly and tell what is really happening. Because we only have to look into our medical practices what kind of patients are coming there. We have children with running noses, teenagers with running noses, elderly who have infections with fever, and we have patients with flu, serious flus in some cases with pneumonia. And those are the cases which we judge only based upon a virus diagnosis, because we don't have anything else anymore. The whole world is only thinking about corona and nothing else. Where's actually the seasonal flu, which should be spreading right now?
You're a doctor, so of course you know about the placebo effect, but there's also lots of talk about the nocebo effect. So when you take something and something happens, even though there are no active components in it, but when you get all worked up about sickness, this can also lead to someone actually getting sick.
Sure, fear and horror weakens the immune system. That's why the clowns go to the children's wards in hospitals, because smiling children have a much better immune situation. This is called psychoimmunology. And what is happening in this world right now is making people sick from an immune pathology perspective, because so much fear and horror is being spread. And now it's winter, the sun is low on the horizon, there's limited vitamin D production. Then we have China as the origin, like with SARS in 2003. We have to look at where is this coming from? In which cities does it start? What are the living conditions there? They are living so close together, and they control the world economy. They produce all kinds of things with cheap labor and under the worst health conditions. They work, for instance, on old monitors which contain phosphorus gases and lead without face mask or respiratory protection, and the poison is washed away, contaminating the groundwater and the air. Then there are the 5G trials in the meantime. None of this is questioned anymore. We are only looking for the killer virus. And we found it, and this year it's called COVID-19. It was renamed from Corona, and only a short while ago it was called SARS-2. But it's always the same staging, whether it's MERS or SARS or Corona or bird flu or swine flu. It's always the experts of the WHO and other virologists and pandemic experts who spread panic. There is a killer virus wave coming at us. Germany can expect up to 35,000 deaths during the swine flu at the time, but it didn't come. It neither came in 1976, in the US when the swine flu started. Back then, neither did it come in 2016, neither was there a bird flu, and now there is a big hype about the corona flu. Whole cities are locked down, trade fairs are being cancelled, flights are cancelled, people cannot travel anymore. 65 million people in China are being locked up in their cities. This is crazy. But the rate of sickness, of infections, and especially the fatalities are totally normal. It's a normal flu.
And if politicians are now talking about locking down whole cities because of this...
Yes, this is nonsense, because you cannot lock up a virus. It's just as hilarious as the sign on the city limits of Landsberg during the bird flu period, which read, "Bird flu free zone." How is the bird supposed to know that? He can't even read. So you can see where this is heading. We are constantly being fooled. The virus is to blame. And this leads us to the theory that viruses make us sick. This is a very interesting thing and has to be challenged. Where does this theory come from, that the germ is making us sick? This goes back a long way into the history of medicine, to Louis Pasteur, Paul Ehrlich and Robert Koch, who back then began a big science competition, and everybody was after the achievement in medicine. This coincided with the invention of the vaccinations and soon got industrialized. That Paul Ehrlich and Louis Pasteur faked diaries and scientific publications is generally known, but it is not shouted from the rooftops. There are even institutes by the name of Paul Ehrlich, even though the guy was a fraud. This should be rectified, but nobody does it. If I do it, I'm considered a nutcase or a conspiracy theorist, and as a medical doctor who should have his license revoked. If a large agency does it, they are also being shot at, so everybody just goes along with the mainstream. And this is a tragedy, because it is contrary to our medical codex.
Yes, but I also studied biology at some point a long time ago, and that is what I was taught at university, and what many doctors are taught. And to get away from this dogma at all, realize that it might be different from what you were taught at university is quite difficult for many doctors.
Yes, this is difficult for doctors. We are learning theoretically an antibiotic for a germ, a virostatic for a virus, but we don't question anymore. And this is the dilemma in this academic medicine. We are developing more and more specialists who are trapped in their tunnel vision, but don't see the human as a whole anymore. Because it makes a difference if a mother is coming along who says, my husband has cheated on me and he has left me, I'm devastated, I don't sleep anymore, can't stop crying, and now the children are sick, and now she has developed a severe flu. Then this can be explained because of the weakening of the immune system, because of her psychological state. The virologist only looks for the virus and says the virus is to blame, not the psychological state of this woman. Another example, a teenager on the Oktoberfest drinks 3 liters of beer, falls to sleep on a park bench in his t-shirt at freezing temperatures, and wakes up the next morning with a stiff neck and high fever. And what is diagnosed? A delayed TBEV case. He had alcohol poisoning. They are not looking for other things anymore. And it's the same thing in China. The living conditions of the people there are not taken into consideration anymore. The fatalities are not at all analyzed. Who is this? Is this, for example, an 80-year-old who has cancer and has received a chemotherapy? Every infect will blow such a person away. And is it permissible to pull all those cases into one box and say this is now another corona fatality?
Another question. What do you think about these corona quick tests? Do you think they
will be as useless as the H1N1 quick tests that we had? There we had 11% accuracy. We didn't even have to examine anymore. When you had a fever and a cough, you were considered a swine flu. Where the seasonal flu cases had gone was irrelevant then. There was even a directive from the health agency not to diagnose it any further, but to simply report it as suspicion case for swine flu. One more and one more and one more. But where were all the other cases of sicknesses? Where was the bird flu when the swine flu spreads? Where is the swine flu when SARS is spreading? Where is corona when MERS spreads? It's always the same pattern. The people always have the same symptoms. They have fever, they have a cough, they have pneumonia, and they can die. But a few. So if we wouldn't know of viruses, it would always look the same for us. Yes, it's winter, the people have vitamin D deficiency because the sun is low and they don't get enough fresh air. Then you have a peak of cases of illnesses, which is mostly in January and February until the middle of March. This is always the peak with flu infections. And then we can say this was now the flu, or it was corona, or whatever, but the patients are always equally sick. It makes no difference for the people, but for the world economy and for virology, it makes a big difference. And there I would like to mention 2 books for the public who's watching. One is Der Seuchenerfinder from Hans Tolzin, a great book where exactly these topics are dealt with, and another book from a children's doctor, Klaus Köhnlein, called Viruswahn, and he describes these things very precise. Tolzin has also researched this very precise, what is made public in which sequence. It's like a crime watch delivery.
Can I ask you something in this context when I see this here? This face mask, does that help at all?
It doesn't help. It doesn't help anything.
But it's sold out everywhere. At Amazon, you can get 3 for 300 euros.
Yes, it's unbelievable. It's like on a black market. But you know, this has a big relevance for the doctors. There are doctors who propagate in the media, we are in despair, we cannot work anymore, we don't have protection suits or face masks or gloves, Sagrotan is sold out. What shall we poor doctors do now? You know that when you properly wash your hands with soap, that the viruses will die. This is something I don't do in my practice. I don't sit around there with a face mask. Some doctors have even put up a plexiglass screen so that the patients don't cough over the counter. It's crazy how the people are fooled. If viruses or bacteria were the cause of the sickness, then the medical doctors would have died out already. Because to us all the sick people come and cough and sneeze and shake our hands, and not every doctor washes his hands after every patient he has seen. They also pick their nose after greeting someone, and then it's in the system. You cannot quarantine a ship like the Diamond Princess with 3,700 passengers. The people just walk through the dining hall, and then everybody gets it through airborne infection if the virus is really the cause. And I even go one step further, where during the time of SARS, exams were done for corona infections with people who never had fever or flu, and with 40% of the patients' antibodies for corona were found. Their smear tests were positive, but antibodies for corona. We have to consider, when you say you have studied biology, what are potentially pathogenic germs? Those are germs which are in your system in healthy days, like pneumococcus, meningococcus in your throat flora. We have chickenpox germ in our body all our lives, which can cause shingles at a higher age. If you are positive for hepatitis B, you have it, some with herpes, but you never get sick in between. So where is the herpes virus? It's very contagious. But where is it in the days when you don't have the symptoms? What is it doing within you? Where are the flu viruses in summer? We are a walking biotope. We have more germs in us than we have body cells. And they belong to us. So I'm certain that if you draw blood from me now, you will find corona antibodies in my blood.
But that is what the newspaper just wrote in capital letters. 70% of all Germans have corona. Is that true?
Yes.
Well, I thought at first.
It's a totally harmless common cold virus. That's why we have to give it another name. It's now called the new corona, the COVID. In any gene chain, a valine is exchanged for a glutathione, and then we have a new mutated virus, a killer virus. And it doesn't matter that this is just a typical flu scenario which is happening today. If you want to call out a suspicion for a worldwide virus, this is how you do it. You cannot contain a virus in a city or on a cruise ship. not even if you seal off 65 million people. They have done everything, and it was said they have learned their lessons after SARS in 2003. They have sealed off everything. It was a role model for military, police, and everybody working together. 65 million people were locked up in their cities, and still the evil virus managed to get even to Germany. And the irony is that the first corona case in Germany was actually in Landsberg, the father of a child who is going to kindergarten here in Kaufering. But then we still reacted fairly relaxed, because normally we doctors know about this, and our health agency in Landsberg has reacted calmly, even if the people are supposed to be quarantined for 14 days, where they get bored and they are not even sick. They simply had a totally harmless flu with a little fever and a running nose. And they get better like most people with a normal immune system do.
Now, I'd like to ask a question, and I think, well, can I get vaccinated against it? Am I right to come to you with that question?
Sure, we can also talk about vaccination because this is my specialty.
No, I mean, what do you think of that?
The pharmaceutical companies are developing corona vaccines. Otherwise, this hype would have never been announced. And now a lot of public money is flowing into the pockets of the pharma companies. And they have a lot of fun with it. It's like with swine flu, a vaccination is demanded. Only this time the Chinese were 2 months too early, or the vaccination production was 2 months too late. Because imagine if the vaccination would be ready now already, what kind of a multi-billion-dollar business that would be. That's why they are under pressure. Either they keep the corona pandemic going for a little longer, but that won't work because we are now already at the beginning of March, and in 1 to 2 weeks the winter time is over, and the people are going back outside into fresh air, and the flu wave is fading out, and then it's gone. And if they come with their vaccination now, it's too late.
All right.
Now, after all these interesting statements...
You see, you can check the website, KLA.TV, I believe. KLA.TV or, yeah, KLA.TV. You can check it by yourself. All right? There are several others. This is a well-known medical doctor, I told you. So he knows exactly what he's talking about. I tried to find out who he is. He knows what he is saying. And the government is aware of him. But you see, we are... Now let me show you something. I have something I believe you can easily understand here. Okay. At the top, I'm showing you, I put it NWO, New World Order. Now there's several groups that are interested in the New World Order. And this is something they've been planning for many years. It's not new. For many years. There's several groups that have been involved with this. They've been working on it to bring in a new world order. And the main theme is one world. One world. That's what they want. That's the main theme. One world. They want everything to become one. One world government. I told you the other day, one world government, one world economy,